Now, my name's Lucia Heath. I'm CEO of Women for Election Australia, and we're a non-partisan organisation that helps to inspire and equip more women to run for public office in Australia. And that could be at the local, state or federal level. I would like to start today by acknowledging country. I am coming to you from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation in Sydney. Feel free to pop in the chat box there where you are coming to us from, but I would like to pay my respects to both elders, past, present, and future leading emerging leaders as well. So, Nicolle, thank you so much for joining us from South Australia. It's great to have you on the call, and I'm really keen to get into a whole bunch of stuff with you today. So for those new to this call, what we often do is I'll have an informal Q&A with Nicolle, and then we'll take questions from the audience as well. So Nicolle, let's kick off if you're ready to go.
Absolutely, and I just acknowledge that we're on Kaurna land here in Adelaide, South Australia. So thank you very much for having me today. Oh,
no, our pleasure. So let's start at the beginning. I think you were elected to the federal seat of Boothby in 2016 in the federal election then, and you replaced an outgoing sitting member, Andrew Southcott. Now, take us to the year prior. It can be a bit of a mystery, the process leading into somebody either getting pre-selected or running in a seat. You were already a member of the Liberal Party, so shine a light on that kind of year prior. Did you know he'd be retiring? Had you been showing ambition for the seat? Did somebody tap you on the shoulder? Just give a bit of light for us on that process and how you went about getting pre-selected.
Okay, well, there was nobody more shocked than me when Dr. Andrew Southcott called me, and I think it was sort of a Tuesday night, and he said, Nicolle, on the front page of the paper tomorrow, you're going to read that I'm retiring after 20 years as the federal member for Boothby, and I would like you to think about running. Absolutely, it had not crossed my mind. So Andrew, bless his heart, was really clear that he was keen to see a woman succeed him. We'd never had a female member for Boothby. And so he contacted me, and he contacted several other women who were quite active in the Liberal Party as well, and encouraged us to put our hand up for pre-selection. So one of the reasons that he asked me to consider running was that I'd been doing a huge amount in terms of voluntary work in the Liberal Party. I'd spent a little bit of time working as a staff member, but that was between 2008 and 2012, and Andrew retired in 2015. So I hadn't been working as a staff member for about 3 years by that stage, but I was a very active volunteer. I was very happily writing a weekly newspaper column for The Advertiser, which is part of the News Corp body of papers. And before that, I'd been writing for The Age. So Andrew knew that I had really strong views, that I was very interested in policy and politics. He knew that I had a good profile because I'd been published weekly in The Advertiser and Adelaide. For anyone who knows Adelaide or is from Adelaide, greetings. We are a one newspaper town, so that was very good in terms of name ID and sort of having a little bit of profile. But no, I had absolutely not thought about Boothby. I was at the point where, and we'll probably talk about this a bit further during our chat today, but I was at the point where I was sort of thinking, oh, maybe one day I'll think about putting my hand up. And with all the work that I've done since on women in politics and women in senior corporate roles, and women who are successful in their careers, we tend to sort of think maybe one day I'll put my hand up for a more senior position, whether that's, CEO or a senior manager or putting your hand up to nominate for politics. And I was very much at that point. So I'd been encouraged by another very good friend who is the federal member for Barker, Tony Passon, to nominate, and I was successful in getting elected to some senior roles within the Liberal Party. So at the time I was sitting on our state executive, which is essentially like the board of the Liberal Party in South Australia, and I was running some key policy committees. So Tony had encouraged me to nominate for those roles and supported me to do so, because he said, well, you never know, you might want to run one day, and I think you're pretty good and you're writing the newspaper columns, and I know you've got a great background in policy and that's what you love. And so he put me in a position where I could take the next step when I decided if or when that might be. But nobody knew that Dr. Andrew Southcott was going to retire. It was a huge shock. He was, I don't think he was even 50. He got elected to Parliament when he was 25, I think. So he'd done 20 years. That's right. Yep, that makes sense. And so everyone was surprised. So in one sense, he did the 6 people who put their hands up for pre-selection for his seat a big favour, because there hadn't been the manoeuvring and the positioning that often occurs when a long-term sitting member indicates that this is their last term and they're not going to go on. So it was wide open. That said, when he called me, I just said, oh, no. And I now know that this is typical of women as well. I said, it's not the right time. I'm not the right person. I'm sure there's someone better. And having done all the reading and the research I've done since on women who women who end up in senior roles or who get asked to put their hand up for senior roles, it's so typical. We tend to hold ourselves back. We tend to lack the natural confidence and ego that we see not hold the blokes back. So Andrew and his wife, Kate, and I knew them really well. I'd known them for a long time. They had to meet with me 4 times before I agreed to nominate for pre-selection. And this was in September 2015. And pre-selection, there was sort of a 6-week pre-selection. So that's when you have to contact all the members of of the Liberal Party in the seat of Boothby. So there are about 600 members in the seat of Boothby. Yep. Contact them all, you write to them, put your CV, meet with as many of them or speak to as many on the phone as humanly possible, which is a bit of a challenge in just a 6-week period. Then you have the pre-selection day, you give a 5-minute speech, take 5 minutes of questions, and then the candidate is chosen. So my pre-selection was at the end of October. And I remember the day very clearly. I gave an okay speech. I think I completely stuffed up the questions. And I walked back into the holding room just thinking, oh, well, I gave it my best shot and, I'm not going to die wondering. So I think I've completely stuffed it up. But that's okay, because I gave it a go. And, maybe this is just a good start for what will become my career. Anyway, there was nobody, again, more shocked than me when the lovely lady Yvette, who's a friend of mine in the Liberal Party, walked into the holding room and said, Nicolle, you've won. That was that. So then the election was in July 2016. So I campaigned full time because the advertiser said, look, now that you're a candidate, we can't have you writing for us anymore. If you don't win, we'll have you back straight away. But you've got to we'll pop you in the freezer for 8 months to see how you go. So I campaigned full time for 8 months and was elected as the first woman to hold the seat of Boothby in July 2016. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. And thank you for shining a light on all of that. And there's a lot to unpick there. I mean, firstly, you obviously had some fantastic allies, champions,
yes,
that were possibly already working on this before.
Before I was, and that's the thing. Before I was.
Yeah, they had the foresight and they were looking forward. And Andrew meeting with you 4 times, Andrew and his wife, to convince you to, I find very impressive. It's something we say all the time in terms of we can't get more women into these parliamentary seats unless when a man retires, they're replaced with a woman. It's just simple. It's just, that's how you get the increase. It's just so, great to see that foresight there. And then something we say at our workshops all the time, timing is so critical.
Yes.
It's so critical, and you won't always feel ready to step forward. But but step forward anyway, because you never know what may happen, the learning process that you get. But when a disruption happens like that, then your odds increase quite significantly to get elected, or certainly to get a profile boost, to get elected in the future as well. So congratulations. Okay, now on to our second question. We have kicked off, and you'll see this in the months ahead nationally, a campaign called #LooksLikeAPolitician. And it's basically, trying to bust some of the imagery of how women politicians are portrayed, not just in Australia, but globally. So we're getting women politicians, could be councillors, federal members, senators, to send in a photo of themselves holding out a placard that says "Looks like a politician." Could be handing out awards at the primary school, could be turning sausages at a fundraiser. It could be while they're doing surf life-saving volunteering on a weekend. Normalises politicians. So tell us, what percentage of your time is spent in Canberra versus your electorate? And also, what is it that you enjoy the most about being out in your community?
We spend just under half the year in Canberra, so it's usually around 19 or 20 weeks a year. So you're away from home a lot, which is challenging, not just for women. And I think we are finally starting to see this portrayed as a family issue rather than a women's issue, which is, we have a lot of male members of parliament at the moment with young kids, whose wives and partners have had babies while they're in office, and who have school-aged children. So this is something that I still think we have not come to grips with very well. But now that it's starting to be seen as a family issue rather than just a women's issue, I hope that we'll see some improvements in how to make federal parliament more family friendly. And I really feel for the West Australians, because there's a huge time difference and it's a very long flight to get all the way from Perth across to Canberra. So when we're in Parliament in an ordinary year, and obviously we've all had a fairly extraordinary year that we never, ever, ever want to see the likes of again in our lifetimes or ever, it's really frenetic. You're usually in there by 7 a.m. at the latest. You don't leave until 8 p.m. at the earliest. And ordinarily, there's question time, things that are obvious, like question time, you're giving speeches, you're voting, but usually we have a huge number of different businesses and industry associations coming into Parliament House to speak to all the members and senators to put across their policy views and wishes and wants and wish lists. You are doing a lot of formal committee work, so we have a lot of formal parliamentary committees that examine legislation or different policy issues. And then you have a lot of informal policy committees as well, both within parties, within the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, the Greens. There are a lot of you and your colleagues come together to discuss issues of interest and issues pertaining to policy or legislation. So it's just very long days and really, really busy. So being back in the electorate is actually the part that I love about this job, and it is all about the people. You just meet the most incredible people, and it's been a huge eye-opener. And I thought I was across a lot of stuff as a newspaper columnist. And writing a weekly column, you've just got to be naturally interested in policy and politics and in people, because you've got to find a new idea each week. But getting elected and going to all the community events that I do, and you've just listed off a lot of groups that I spend a lot of time with, like my CFS, my Country Fire Service volunteers, Surf Lifesavers, Rotary, Lions, schools, sporting clubs, every single sporting club you could possibly imagine, whether it's lacrosse, baseball, footy, hockey, everything, netball, everything. So you spend so much time out with people who are genuine volunteers, who are doing things and giving to our community on top of their family responsibilities, on top of their work. And it is just so inspiring, and just hearing people's stories, hearing the reasons why they're giving back, and knowing that they're doing it for all the right reasons. That's really what always gives me the motivation to go on. And I've had some challenging times along the way in my journey, but just hearing all of these amazing stories and then being able to help people. So getting funding, just even small amounts of funding for different clubs to help them do what they do best is really, really wonderful.
Yeah. Well, great. I think, one of the things that we like to promote, and Nicolle, so many of the women that attend our events, they're head of PNCs, or they run a local community campaign, or they could be doing all sorts of different things out in the community already. But if you do tap them on the shoulder, they say, well, I couldn't do that. And you go, well, you are doing such a large proportion of it already with what you're doing. So we're there to assist that gap, that confidence gap, skills gap. But so many women leaders out in the community already, to parlay the skills across is often closer than they think.
Absolutely. That is so true. And I think one of the, I say this to my school students when I go to talk to them, especially years 10 to 12. One of the most important things that I actually did from leaving school onwards is not my law degree, although that's incredibly helpful, of course, when you're dealing with legislation. Not really it is my arts degree, because that's where I fell in love with politics and policy making and gained the skills to do that well. And that's what I've done throughout my career. But it's actually the time that I spent waitressing while I was at uni. So I worked in a pub, so, behind the bar a bit, but mainly waitressing in the restaurant. They are the skills that I use most as a member of parliament, because you're listening, you're dealing with people, you don't know who they are, where they've come from, if they're having a good day, a bad day, whether they're happy, angry, sad, whether they're having a fight with, their kids or their partner. You have to, you've got to read that situation, communicate with them, give them the very best experience possible. And it's the listening and the analysing and then the acting, the implementation of the information that you've been given. And really it was such a great foundation for doing this job, especially because, as a lower house member of parliament, you are out and about. I spend very little time in my electorate office. I am always out and about, talking to people all over the community. And I've got 125,000 voters. So that's a lot.
Big ground to cover then.
Yeah. And the other thing that I probably didn't mention, I've always been very active in doing my shopping centre listening posts and also street corner listening posts. So I do them regularly, where I'll just go and, like, you do a letterbox drop to the neighbourhood saying, I'm going to be in your local park this Saturday between 1:30 and 2:30. Come along and have a chat. And that's a really, really good way to go to people, as well as door knocking, but to let people come out and talk to you in their own patch, in their own environment.
Yeah, fantastic. I think, so many skills, a lot of feminine skills there too, listening, empathizing, trying to solve the problem. So, I've got to go on to the next question, and we're going to run out of time because I've got more questions.
Okay.
And we're gonna move now to some of the challenges that you were talking about before. Certainly, one of the barriers of entry that we find with women, not wanting to enter politics, is the concerns that they have around how they may be judged or judged differently from men, whether it be on life choices, whether it be on how they look. You have called out a number of times kind of the targeted and gendered treatment that you've received, whether it be when you appeared on Q&A from the 2019 election campaign. You were very vocal about some of the treatment you received there from advocacy groups, and with letter drops, and I think your car was defaced and your electorate office was defaced. You had a stalker at one point, just, horrifying things, really. And then most recently, you adorned yourself with the garbage bag, which I found fantastic. But again, because you had received press, a journalist had referred to what you were wearing, like just so archaic in so many ways, but still occurs. And we try to we try to call that out as often as we can as well. So how do you, in the face of all that, like how do you stay resilient in the face of those kind of attacks, and also have you felt supported when you've called it out, particularly as a woman in the LNP,
So, okay, lots of elements to this one as well. Staying resilient, I think you develop so much resilience as you go in this role. So going through, and this is why I think I really feel the Liberal Party system is a good one, and it's a very important part of preparing you for what will come. So going through, 6 weeks of pre-selection, having to go and talk to 600 people, tell your story, answer their questions is a good start to it. Then, of course, a campaign for 8 months. So you're, again, out and about talking to tens of thousands of people. It's really important to have a good team around you. Obviously, I have wonderful staff. I have very, very supportive family and friends. During the 2019 election campaign, which is where I ended up with a stalker, and my campaign office was vandalised, calling me a skank and a prostitute who charges $60 an hour. It was just written all over my posters and things. I guess at the time, because you're so in amongst the actual campaign proper, because every single minute of every single day is being used up, you don't have too much time to sort of stop and focus on it. So particularly with the stalker, like, it was bothering me, but I was just like, no, well, lots of things probably. But first I was like, well, maybe I'm just overreacting. Maybe this isn't as bad as it is. And it was actually, again, another male colleague, now Senator Alex Antic, who said, Nicolle, this is stalking. He's a lawyer. He said, this is stalking. I've checked the act. We are going to the police. And I wouldn't have done that. I think women often as well think, look, I don't want to be seen as a victim or be accused of being a victim. I don't want to be accused of not being tough enough. But Alex was amazing, and he went with me to the police, and we reported it, and they went and charged the stalker. So that sort of support is incredible. But again, that's a bloke within the Liberal Party who was just so wonderfully supportive of me, and not even protective, but like sometimes it takes someone else to sort of say to you, this is unacceptable. You don't have to put up with it. Let's do something about it. In terms of you spoke also about obviously the garbage bag incident, and for anyone who's not across that, a local newspaper columnist here in Adelaide dedicated sort of a fifth of his weekly article to criticising the way I look and the things that I wear. And in the scheme of what I've been through, like, it was at the very lower end of being judged as a female and the criticism that I've had as a woman. But I just got so angry because it was sort of the last of a long line of ways that I've been attacked as a woman, that I shot a little video and said, what am I supposed to wear? A garbage bag? Because I think, like most women, all professional women, you put so much time and energy into making sure that you're dressed appropriately, that you're not going to offend anyone, that you're not going to distract people, because you want people to just be talking to you as a person, getting their message across, feeling that you're approachable. And so I was just so frustrated. I was like, I try so hard to dress so that people feel comfortable with me, and so that anyone can come and talk to me, and that I look professional in terms, so that people realise that I really take my role seriously, and I'm as respectful as possible. So I was just so frustrated. And the reason that I've spoken out about all of these sorts of things, because the media have reported on all of them, is because I just don't want women going through this anymore. I honestly thought in the year 2020 that we didn't need to put up with this stuff anymore. And we shouldn't have to. But the fact that people still think it's acceptable to judge people on on their appearance is appalling, which is why I thought, if I don't call this out, then it will happen to other women. And it was really interesting, and I was so grateful and encouraged to see former Prime Minister Julia Gillard speaking at the same time about her new book. And please have a look at it if you haven't. It's about women in leadership, particularly in politics. And she addresses all sorts of issues, but she said in the interviews that she's given around the release of the book that she wishes that she had called out particularly the commentary about her dress and her appearance when it was happening, because maybe it would have stopped it. And maybe me, as another female member of parliament, wouldn't be needing to have this conversation about having been attacked over my appearance because the media journalists would have realised that it's just unacceptable to judge women like that. I want to be judged on the work I do for my electorate, on the policies I've managed to have implemented during my time in Parliament. Judge me on what I do, not what I look like.
Yeah. Well, look, I think it was a wonderful statement, and like I said, it's not the first time you've called it out, but that video went viral, and that's what. I think I've reached out to you like within the 5 hours after that saying, good on you. What a fantastic mic drop. I'm sorry you have to do it. And can you come join us and speak to some of our followers? So, well, let's lead into then, because you shared with me, which was fantastic, and you've co-authored a couple of papers now with the Menzies Research Centre, and they're titled Gender and Politics, particularly analysing and finding ways to reach out to more women, particularly to join the Liberal Party. Tell me, I mean, you've already talked a little bit to it, but why is it so important for you to have more women flanking you there in the organisational wing of the Liberal Party, but in the chamber as well? And are women, are they hearing the call to if not join, then certainly get involved with the party?
Yes, well, we had a really wonderful result in the 2019 federal election. The Liberal Party in the House of Representatives elected 7 men and 7 women. So we achieved 50-50 representation for our new members of Parliament last election. And what was particularly encouraging, first of all, that was amazing, but it was particularly encouraging that they're in a mix of safe and marginal seats. So there are several women who are in incredibly safe seats, and a couple of blokes in, fairly safe seats. And then the marginal seats were held by both men and women, whereas we know traditionally in politics across the board, women have tended to get elected to the marginals, but rarely the safe seats. Why do we need more women in Parliament? So that, for many reasons, mainly so that it becomes normalised, so that we're not and I'm going to use the word novelty. It's not quite the right word. I don't think we're seen as a novelty, but when we have more women, I think we will see less commentary about how we look, what we wear, how we sound, how we behave, because there'll be a critical mass of us. So there will be so many that we won't be unusual or be seen as unusual anymore. There will be a critical mass of women. So people just start seeing us as people rather than, oh, there's another woman in Parliament. Of course, women have incredible skills and experiences that are different to men. And that's as well, the breadth of diversity in Parliament makes us a better, stronger Parliament. And that's across the board. That's not just about women, but it's having people from all sorts of backgrounds who are contributing their unique perspective. And that's when we're strongest as a nation, when you've got that diversity of view, that diversity of representation. For the Liberal Party, we have a very different approach to the Labor Party. So the Labor Party implemented a quota system many years ago now. So they have about 40% of their federal members are women, and that's because of their quota system. The Liberal Party, we have very different views. We don't believe in quotas, and I personally don't believe in quotas. It should always be the best person for the job. Now, sometimes that will be a woman, but sometimes that will be a man. So if it's in a seat, and especially a marginal seat, and you've got an incredible bloke who has, you know, worked across the community volunteering, he might actually be the best person for the job. But what the Liberal Party does need to do and has been doing is setting targets, because we do know that we need to increase our numbers. Labor across the country have about double the number of women that we do, and that's just not good enough on behalf of the Liberal Party. And it's been a problem for a long time. It's a problem of successive governments. So we are working on that. For us though, and I mean, I've touched on these things already, it's about confidence. And that's why, you know, I've spent a lot of time, I flew myself around the nation to talk to all my different Liberal Party divisions, to talk to them about confidence. You know, have a think about whether you are the right person. It might not be the right time, but as you said earlier, just have a go, because you'll get some really important experience regardless. For me, it's also within the Liberal Party about people getting that grassroots experience. And I have recently come across the concept of the broken rung. I don't know if anyone here today has heard of that, but for so long, we kept just looking at the issue of not having enough women in senior leadership roles as a problem that needed to be solved at the top. And it was utterly the wrong way to look at it. We need to solve the problem from the bottom up, the grassroots up. And I've long argued that within the Liberal Party, and now I've actually got some scholarship around it through some reading I've been doing about the broken rung concept, which is getting women into the junior leadership roles or the junior management positions, so they make the networks, make the contacts, gain the relevant experience to keep progressing. And you've got to keep the critical mass of women in those junior roles so that they're building up through an organisation or through the Liberal Party, so that then you've got an actual pool of female talent to choose from, rather than looking around going, oh, well, you know, we've got 10 men in senior exec roles but no women, but we really think we need a woman as the next CEO. Like, it's about fixing the problem from the bottom up. And so with my experience, you know, I think that's why my path, in a sense, was, I wouldn't say easy, but I'd done all the right things, and I hadn't done them because I knew that I should do them. I'd done them because I was so lucky to have these incredible male members of the Liberal Party who said, hey, you should think about doing X, Y, and Z to set yourself up, even if you decide not to do it. Yeah. At least do this, because then you've got a chance to progress. And I ended up in the perfect position with the right CV, with the networks, with the contacts, to be a real chance when it came to pre-selection, because I'd done that grassroots voluntary work to set myself up.
Yeah, I think see a comment there, the sponsorship and advocacy you had is great to hear. And you said lucky. I always find the harder I work, the luckier I get. But but it is that pipeline that you're talking about. I mean, that pipeline is so important. Me personally, I've spent a lot of time socialising what we're doing with the organisational wing of all the major parties, saying, you know, come and be a part of our event, socialise with all the women that attend, you know, use us as a pipeline. We're a non-partisan organisation, but women come to us with some alignment already, whether it's party members or not. But taking that first step can be super hard. And often you don't want to take the first step by attending a branch meeting and finding out next steps. So in lieu of that, what will it be? And, you know, that's us. I will always prosecute, that's us right there. And then we can then get you in contact with, you know, people for next steps from that process. But, 5 C's, we call it, Nicolle, the 5 C's, the big barriers. Cash is one, childcare is another, candidate selection, culture, particularly party culture, and confidence. So all our workshops are aimed to address specifically those issues. So I could not agree more. All right, let's move to Parliament now. I'm going to start thinking about your questions and formulating them in the chat, everyone. Let's move to your time in Parliament now, because you in your first term, you were really quite dedicated to raising the issue and awareness in Parliament about endometriosis, and you got success with the government allocating 2.5. I see some people doing that in the the government allocated 2.5 million to additional research, specifically on detecting and treating the disease. So well done on prosecuting the case. I'm sure there's been other cases you've prosecuted that you haven't won, but did you, once you got elected, did you have a laundry list? Like, did you hit that chamber going, you know what, it's this that I want to elevate? And if you did, can you share some of them with us?
Yep, absolutely. So, look, I'm sure most lower house members of federal parliament, infrastructure, local roads, rail is a massive issue for, I think, all of us. But here in Adelaide, we still have most of our freight routes, especially trucking and trains, going through suburban Adelaide. So that was a massive one on my hit list, which is still there. That's a long-term problem that I'm working on. The arts, I've always been very passionate about the arts, and have done some really, really exciting stuff that's happening through the Adelaide City deal. We're getting a very significant Indigenous culture and art gallery purpose-built here in SA, which will be incredible for the nation, not just for SA, and a couple of other art galleries, the Harms and Nora Hyson Gallery and Carrickhill. So my art stuff has been amazing and really exciting. That's a personal passion, but I think is doing a lot of good for the state as well. And foreign investment, I come from a farm. My mum and dad are farmers, and so foreign investment, especially foreign government investment in our farming land here in Australia, is something I was particularly passionate about coming in. I wrote a lot of columns about it when I was a newspaper columnist, and I've been delighted to see all of those rules tighten up during my time as well. But the two things that I'm particularly proud of that are both women's related issues that I've done in federal parliament was working on endometriosis and also stillbirth. So issues that affect women primarily, but have a massive effect on families as well. So the endo, I think we're up to about 16 million of funding now. There was a big announcement in May of another 9. We awarded 9 million for a range of projects. And this might touch on the next question that I think you have for me about working with other women in other parties in Parliament. Yeah. I didn't come in, I knew about the issue of endometriosis because one of the key advocacy groups nationwide is based here in Adelaide in South Australia. So when I was a newspaper columnist, they invited me along and I wrote a column about endo and pelvic pain to help raise awareness. So I think it was 2017, I just happened to be in the chamber in the House of Reps, and I heard the Labor member from Canberra, Gabe Brotman, giving a speech on endo. And I went, oh my gosh, someone else here knows about endo. Nobody knows what endo is. This is amazing. So I literally, it was a 90-second statement that Gay gave. So I listened to it because it was only a minute and a half. I literally chased her out of the chamber down the hallway saying, excuse me. And she was like, who is this crazy liberal woman chasing me down who I've never, ever met? And I said, oh, look, I know we've never met. I'm Nicolle. I'm brand new. You know about endo. I know about endo too. We have to do something on this. So Gay and I formed the Parliamentary Friends of Endometriosis Awareness. And by the end of that year, we'd convinced, we both went to our respective health ministers. So she went to a shadow minister, I went to the Minister for Health, Greg Hunt, and we'd convinced Greg to take action. And that was the start of it. And the very start of it was Greg apologised on behalf of successive governments just for genuinely, the pain and suffering that women have gone through, unrecognised, unacknowledged for generations. And he also said that we would start a national action plan process, which we did, which was complete within a year. It's a fantastic document. And I'm very proud to say, like, when I went to Greg, he's like, well, just put a one-pager together for me and tell me what we need to do. And it was education and awareness, better treatment and research. And a lot of those, I mean, mine was a very, very brief policy paper, but that was greatly expanded upon for the National Action Plan, which is a brilliant document. On the issue of stillbirth, my good friend, Senator Jim Molan, actually spoke about it in the party room, and I jumped up and said, this is a really important issue and we're not doing enough and we need to do a lot more. Anyone who has gone through the tragedy of having a baby born still or someone within their family knows how utterly devastating it is for people. And the fact that we lose over 2,000 babies a year who are born still, and that's double the national road toll. So we all know how to stay safe on the road, right? You know, don't drink, drive, don't speed, wear your seatbelt, don't be tired. But women aren't told the basics, and there are some really, really easy things you can do, like sleep on your side and monitor your baby's movements so that you know if something isn't quite right, and if you feel that something's not quite right, go to your doctor and don't leave until they investigate it properly. So there are a lot of different ways that you end up working with people in Parliament, but there is a lot more that we do on a bipartisan basis than you would ever know through the media, because I guess that's not, the media don't tend to like reporting the happy cooperative stories, do they? They just like the controversial stories.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, actually, and it's something we try to highlight. And we had Jane Hume present at our Canberra conference late last year, and she was talking about, you know, the WhatsApp group that the female senators had in Canberra and across party, and I was just going, what? You know, why don't we hear this? Like it's such a positive story. And the same thing in the New South Wales Parliament, ran conferences there and talking about how everyone gets together cross party when something gets blocked, and how can we work this together, everyone being the women I'm talking about there. So, you know, it provides hope when we hear stories like that, and that's why we want to hear them more and more. So look, I'm going to throw to some questions that have come up in the chat now. Nicolle, I know we've gone a few minutes over what I said we would take out of your time. Have you got another 3 or 4 minutes?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, no, this is really important. Whatever I can do to encourage more women to please think about putting their hand up to run, whether it's local, state or federal government, I'm all yours.
Terrific. All right. Well, strap in then. So here we go. So from Leslie Clark, what target has the Liberal Party set for percentage of women MPs, and when is it proposed to be achieved? And if it's not achieved, what action will the party take? So
that's right. Yeah, someone will answer. They'll be answering to me. So Federal Exec has set a target of 50-50 representation by 2025. So the 2019 election result was incredibly encouraging, but we've got a lot more work to do. And one of the things is, and one of my key messages to all women, but particularly women in my party, and I'd like to see more, is start doing the things to set yourself up, even if you don't end up putting your hand up. But it's too late. It's often too late by the time you get to a pre-selection to actually win that pre-selection to then progress and contest an election. It's, you know, getting involved, all the 5 C's that you spoke about earlier. It's getting involved at the grassroots level, making those really important networks, giving yourself the best chance to then put your hand up. But yeah, so there's a lot of things we still need to do to get there. And I have found, and I look around, so the year I got elected, 2016, and this is in the Menzies Research Centre paper that Nick Cater and I updated in 2017, we had a list of all the people I got elected with, and I think from memory there were 15 or so of us, only 2 women and 13 or so men. Literally every single male was in a safe seat, and the 2 women, we were in marginal seats. And knowing these colleagues now, who are all brilliant and really, really impressive people, they had started planning this 10 years before. They knew which seat they wanted to run for. They did all the groundwork, sort of, a lot of them had the numbers sorted out because they just knew. And this gets back to men. I still find, they just have the natural confidence. They either know or they find out what it takes to get where they want to go, and they do it in a really methodical way. Whereas women, when you're sort of lacking the confidence in the first place, or you can't see yourself in that role, or you haven't even thought about being in that role, then you're so far behind the men who have worked out a long time before where they want to be. So that's just getting back to the target is 50-50 representation by 2025, but we've got a long way to go because a lot of the people who are elected in my year, for example, will probably have 20-year parliamentary terms. So I think, and I'm sure I know this isn't just a Liberal Party problem, it's starting to plan ahead. As a woman, whatever your political allegiance may be is really important.
Yeah, and that pipeline, we're back to that pipeline again. So pipeline and the planning and the A to Z and the countdown. Here's your 300 days, here's your 100 days. It's things we teach at our Equip workshop. Put it in get your war calendar, work backwards from that. So yes, still a way to go, but glad to know that people are going to answer if the targets don't get met. Okay, from Karen. Do you have any suggestions on how to change the way Parliament works to make it more family friendly? And do you think the pandemic has kicked off these changes? So I think we're talking online there. I'm not going to presume, Karen, but that'll be part of it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a really tricky one whilst we are still operating in Canberra with essentially everyone being fly in, fly out. If you're lucky, you fly in. Well, you used to be able to fly in Monday morning and sort of fly out Thursday night, but even still, that's away from home for a long time. Most people fly in Sunday night, fly out Thursday night or Friday morning. I do think that the pandemic, if there's any good that comes out of this awful, awful year, perhaps it is that we may actually get to a point where we could even operate, perhaps half the sittings remotely. It's actually worked. The people remoting in has worked extremely well. So they got the system up and running pretty quickly, especially for Parliament House. Nothing ever tends to happen very fast there because it's very bound by a lot of rules, protocols, procedures, and process. But that's worked effectively to have people to be able to give speeches remotely. The next thing will be, can we then let them vote? But I think that, this could very much be a workable model that would help enormously and mean that people could stay in their home states. And, maybe we could get really creative and still have the physical parliament, and it's a roster system so that you need to physically attend for certain times of the year, once every 3 months, and the rest of the time you can remote in. So, I think that this is a huge opportunity to look at how we can be far more family friendly, and for men and for women. It's a huge issue for families. Yeah. Don't make it a gendered issue. And we've seen councils, for those who are on the call, council meetings have gone online now. So, and that's been a large response to the pandemic. Some were already doing it, but in terms of reducing barriers, making it more accessible, it's a massive improve. And yes, there's constitutional issues federally, but when the political will is there, these things can happen, as we've seen overseas. So I'm going to go to a question from Cheryl. It's so easy listening to your amazing career path. It's been a goal of mine for many years, but never took that first step. Hardest step is the first one. Sorry, I'm interjecting. As soon as you admit that you want to run, everything else becomes easier, is our
anecdotal evidence. I'm in the country, so how easy is it to step up? I'm super busy volunteering with and being PNC president and etc. So Nicolle, I am going to let you to answer this, but I'm just going to add one more thing in here. We are all crazy, super busy with extraordinarily awesome, noble stuff. Being PNC president, running those advocacy campaigns, such a good way to get political skills, but cannot get trapped in them. Do them for 2 years, then move on. 2 years, move on. We so often, as women, get trapped in these positions, and it ends up being kind of an anvil that we carry, which means we don't take the next step. The men aren't often trapped in those same volunteering positions. So you've got fantastic runs on the board there, Cheryl, but start your exit strategy now with some of those things so you can take the next step. Okay, Nicolle, based in the country, how easy is it to step up if you're not in an urban seat?
Yeah, well, I was born and bred in the country, and Tony Passon, who was, one of the really important people in sort of talent IDing me, I suppose, and saying, hey, Nick, you need to think about doing X, Y, and Z, and then pushing me into it, is a country member. So first of all, I just want to say that's really good advice about not getting, and women are so giving. We are so giving, I find. We find it much harder to put those boundaries around what we're doing. So that's really, I've not heard that advice before about being careful not to get trapped in roles, especially voluntary roles. Share the love around. In the country, find, if you're, I'm guessing, if you're in the country, you're probably in a Liberal or a National Party seat, probably. There are a few country Labor seats as well. So it sort of depends on your party as to how easy it will be to get involved. My advice would be just join up to your local branch, whether that's, Liberal, Labor, National, Green, and just go along and sort of check it out. Now, if you have someone who is an active party member of your local branch, or the party president of your local branch, then perhaps have a quiet chat to them. You've always got to be a bit careful with politics, because some people can be very territorial about their patch and about someone just popping up and thinking they're wanting to put their hand up as the next member, because that person may also be thinking they want to be the next member. So I think if you can possibly find someone within your local party branch who you really trust, and then have a confidential discussion about them, just saying, hey, I really want to get a bit more involved, and then just sort of gently start to suss it out until you've worked out who's who, essentially, who might be able to help you, who you can trust to help you progress. The other thing I would say is, if you've got a really good state or federal member who you have a relationship with, and if you're an active community volunteer, you probably do, ask them to make an appointment to have a meeting with them and have the same conversation, as in, I'd really love to just get a bit more involved. Can you tell me about how I might do that? I have that conversation with people all the time. But again, it is politics. It can be pretty ruthless. So until you have really sort of sussed out who's who, just be a bit careful about how much you reveal about your ambition until you've really worked out the people who you can trust and support you.
That's great. That is great advice. And Cheryl, if you're in a remote or regional area, attending council meetings, and you can attend online now too, and just watch everyone around that chamber, the different councillors, do it over a couple of meetings, 3 meetings, get a sense of who you kind of align with, and reach out and have a coffee. And it could be on any number of issues, but that's another way too, if you're particularly in a remote area. Nicolle, we are banging right up against 2:00, so I'm going to close everything there, but want to thank you again for your time and for your public service as a woman in politics. We hope we get to talk with you again in the future, but if everyone across their screen can do the bit of the virtual clap for me, that would be great. There we go. You can see everyone. And yes, hope we get to chat again in the future. But, you know, for those that are still on the call, please make sure you go to our website. We have one only online event left in terms of a training event between now and the end of the year. The last 5 that we've held have all sold out before we've closed, which shows me how women are mobilising in this country. So go to wfea.org.au to get that information. We have 2 more in conversations like this before the end of the year, but make sure that you signed on to our newsletter so that you can find out things before everyone else does, so that you can get that jump on. But Nicolle, thank you for your time, and everybody take care out there. Look forward to seeing you at the next event. Bye everyone. Thanks, Nicolle.
Thank you.